The word floated through the air like a quiet blessing, thin and fragile, before the bell above the bakery door rang and shattered the morning open. Sweet Baobab Bakery sat on a narrow street where Itaewon bled softly into an older Afro-Korean enclave, one of those places Seoul never advertised, but everyone somehow found. The ovens were already warm, the scent of cardamom, cinnamon, and fermented dough drifting out to the sidewalk. Morning light brushed the front windows without fully committing, as if the day itself was still deciding what kind of story it wanted to tell. Inside, Nari Adebayo Kim stood behind the counter, her back turned, carefully arranging trays of honey bread glazed with ginger syrup. Her apron strained gently over her stomach, 8 months heavy, the fabric stretched tight by a life that kicked and shifted as if impatient with waiting. The baby had been restless since dawn. Nari had smiled through it, whispering calming words under her breath, pretending she didn't feel the tension humming beneath her skin. The bell rang. She didn't turn right away. "Good morning," she called out, voice warm, practiced. "You're just in time." The honey bread still. The words died in her throat. The bakery went quiet. Not the pleasant kind of quiet that follows early hours. This was different. Heavy. The kind that presses against your ears. The kind that tells your body something has entered the room that doesn't belong to safety. Nari turned. He stood just inside the door, dressed in black, so precise it looked carved rather than tailored. The suit fit him like intention. Not flashy. Not loud. Power never needed to shout. His presence alone bent the space around him, made the shelves feel smaller, the air thinner. Kang Jae-min. Everyone in Seoul's undercurrents knew the name. Afro-Korean. Second generation. The man who controlled territory from Gangnam's private clubs down to the forgotten docks near Incheon. The man people lowered their voices for without realizing they were doing it. He wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't his street. This wasn't his hour. Their eyes met across the counter. Time collapsed. 8 months of absence folded inward, crushed into a single breathless second. His gaze moved before his control could stop it, downward, slow, unguarded, until it reached her stomach. He froze. Something sharp passed through his expression. Recognition. Shock. Then something far more dangerous. Nari's fingers slipped. The tray crashed to the floor. Honey bread shattered against white tile. Syrup splattered like dark amber, spreading outward in sticky veins. The sound echoed too loudly, too violently, ricocheting off the walls like a warning shot. Her hands moved instinctively to her belly. "You shouldn't be here," she said, the words barely more than air. Jaemin didn't answer. His eyes never left her stomach. The baby kicked hard, sudden and fierce, as if reacting to the charge in the room. "That child," he started, then stopped. Nari took a step back. "Please," she said, already retreating, heart hammering. "Just leave." She glanced toward the back room out of habit and felt a fresh spike of fear when she remembered. Her grandmother wasn't there today. No familiar voice. No witness. No shield. Jaemin moved. One blink, and he was no longer by the door. His hand caught her wrist as she stumbled back, steadying her before she could fall. The grip wasn't painful. It didn't need to be. It was controlled. Final. The kind of touch that made it clear escape wasn't part of the equation. "Don't," he said quietly. The word carried weight. Heat bloomed where his fingers circled her wrist. Familiar. Unwelcome. Her breath caught despite herself. That was when she noticed them. 2 men stood just inside the doorway now, silent, watchful. She hadn't heard them enter. No one ever did. Customers froze mid-motion, coffee cups hovering, mouths half open. No one needed an explanation. Everyone understood danger when it announced itself without words. The name Kong didn't need introductions. Jaemin lifted his free hand. That was all. The room emptied. Chairs scraped. A paper bag dropped. Someone muttered a hurried apology that made no sense. The bell rang again and again as people fled, the sound shrinking with each exit until the bakery was theirs alone. Jaemin turned back to her. 8 months, he said. His voice was low, steady, threaded with something tight and restrained. 8 months, Nari. She tried to pull free. Failed. You don't get to say my name, she snapped, anger cracking through fear. Not after. He loosened his grip slightly, not letting go, just enough to remind her he was listening. I've been looking for you. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. That's a lie. His brow furrowed. You ended it, she continued, the words spilling now unstoppable. You sent papers. You disappeared. You chose. Her voice faltered. He followed her gaze again, slower this time, as if afraid of what the truth might demand from him. Understanding began to form. Not complete. Not yet. But enough to change the air. Nari, he said, and this time her name sounded different. Not ownership. Not command. Something closer to disbelief. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what, she shot back. That I was disposable? That I was an embarrassment you needed erased. Something dark flickered behind his eyes. Before he could respond, pain tore through her abdomen. Not the dull pressure she'd grown used to. This was sharp. Wrong. She gasped, folding forward. Jamin caught her instantly, his arm sliding around her back, pulling her against his chest without hesitation. What is it? He demanded, control fracturing at the edges. What's happening? Her fingers dug into his sleeve. Something's not right. The baby kicked again, frantic this time. Jamin's jaw clenched. His phone was already in his hand. Get the car, he said into the line, voice turning cold and precise. Now. He looked down at her, fury and fear colliding in his gaze. We're not finishing this here, he said. But we are finishing it. He lifted her effortlessly, cradling her as if she weighed nothing at all. As he carried her toward the door, his eyes flicked once, just once, to the ruined pastries on the floor. Sweetness destroyed. Evidence of a collision neither of them had survived unscarred. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that something dangerous and irreversible had just been set back into motion. And somewhere between the bakery door and the waiting car, the past caught up with them. The car pulled away from the curb, tires cutting through morning traffic, but the bakery stayed behind, silent, broken, holding secrets soaked into its floor. That bakery had been Nari's entire life long before it ever became the place where fate dragged her past back into the open. She hadn't been born into comfort or certainty. She came into the world in a small apartment above a closed-down tailor shop, to parents who believed survival was a skill you learned day by day. Her father, Ade Adebayo, had arrived in Korea as a student from Lagos with 2 suitcases and a stubborn refusal to fail. Her mother, Kim Hye-jin, was the youngest daughter of a woman who sold bread on street corners after the war because hunger didn't wait for grief to pass. They met the way many immigrant love stories begin, quietly, accidentally, and against the advice of everyone around them. For a few years, life was hard but full. Then it wasn't. A winter night. A bus accident on a mountain road slick with ice. 2 parents who never made it home. Nari was 7. That was the night she learned what leaving really meant. Her grandmother, Mama Eunice Kim, took her in without hesitation. A woman with an African head wrap tied over silver hair and hands rough from decades of work, Mama Eunice didn't cry much. She had learned early that tears didn't feed children. What she did instead was work. Sweet Baobab Bakery was born out of that stubborn refusal to disappear. At first, it wasn't a shop. Just a borrowed oven. A folding table. Bread wrapped in paper and sold before sunrise to factory workers and taxi drivers. Mama Eunice mixed recipes the way she mixed cultures, Korean rice flour with African spices, ginger where cinnamon should have been, honey infused with clove and nutmeg. People didn't understand it at first. Then they tasted it. By the time Nari was old enough to reach the counter, the bakery had walls, a name, and regulars who greeted Mama Eunice like family. Nari learned early that dough had moods. That yeast responded better to patience than force. That food could hold memory in a way words couldn't. She also learned something else. Everyone leaves. So she stopped expecting them to stay. School ended, friends drifted, teachers came and went. The bakery remained. It was the one place that never abandoned her. When grief pressed too hard, she kneaded it into dough. When loneliness crept in, she baked through it. By her mid-20s, Nari had become the heart of Sweet Baobab. She modernized the presentation, but never the soul. She paired West African spice blends with Korean techniques, turning traditional sweets into something familiar but new. Food bloggers discovered her. Influencers posted photos. Lines formed outside on weekends. What she didn't know, what Mama Eunice never talked about, was that the street had changed. Protection money had been paid quietly for years. Not out of fear, but practicality. The collectors were polite, respectful. They never touched the bakery, never raised their voices. The payments moved upward, unseen, until they landed in the hands of a man who had never stepped foot inside. Kang Jae-min. His world could not have been more different. He grew up behind gates, surrounded by men who never smiled unless ordered to. Afro-Korean by blood, raised between Seoul and Los Angeles, groomed from childhood to understand power before he understood affection. His grandfather built the foundation. His father expanded it. Jaemin perfected it. He didn't inherit the empire because of age or name alone. He earned it. By 32, he controlled networks that stretched from luxury real estate to underground betting rings. Money moved because he allowed it to. People lived or disappeared based on decisions made in rooms without windows. And yet, for all of it, his penthouse nights were quiet. Too quiet. Everyone around him wanted something: favor, protection, access. No one wanted him. Not without conditions. Not without calculation. Loneliness sat heavy in his chest, though he rarely acknowledged it. Feelings were weaknesses in his world. Attachments were liabilities. That's what he had been taught. Until the night Sweet Baobab catered a private meeting. He wasn't supposed to notice the food. Meetings like that were about territory and threats, not flavor. But one bite stopped him mid-sentence. Honey bread, still warm, sweet but sharp, reminding him of a childhood kitchen he hadn't thought about in years. "Who made this?" he asked. The question rippled through the room. That was the first time he saw Nari. Standing near the door, gathering empty trays, unaware she had already crossed a line she didn't know existed. Their eyes met. Something unsettled in him. She should have been afraid. Everyone else was. Instead, she saw a man who looked tired. Not broken. Just alone. Two people shaped by survival, standing on opposite ends of a city that pretended they didn't exist side by side. They didn't know it then, but from that moment, their paths were already bending toward each other. Toward love. Toward betrayal. Toward the kind of collision that doesn't just break hearts, it reshapes lives. And now, as the city sped past the car window and Nari fought through pain beside the man she once believed abandoned her, both of them were about to learn the same truth. Some worlds stay separate only until the moment they don't. And when they collide, nothing survives unchanged. If you've ever loved someone from a world you didn't belong in, if you've ever been told you were a mistake meant to be erased, this story isn't just entertainment, it's personal. Stay with it. Because what broke them apart wasn't fate. It was someone watching quietly from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when you find out who, everything you think you know about loyalty will change. The catering job was supposed to be simple. Drop the trays. Arrange the display. Leave before the real conversation started. That was always the rule. Sweet Baobab Bakery had been hired many times for private events, birthdays, gallery openings, quiet business dinners, but this one felt different the moment Nari stepped inside the building. The elevator ride alone told her she had crossed into a world that didn't welcome mistakes. No music. No small talk. Just men in dark suits standing too still, eyes always watching. She kept her head down. Her hands didn't shake, though her instincts warned her they should. The meeting room was large and dim, the kind of place designed to make people feel small. Long table. Frosted glass. Curtains pulled tight. Voices dropped the moment she entered. She set the trays down carefully, honey bread glazed with spiced syrup, rice pastries infused with ginger and cardamom, small bites meant to calm tense minds. She didn't look up. Not until she heard a chair scrape. Stop. One word. Everything froze. Nari lifted her head. That was when she saw him. Kong Jae-min sat at the center of the table, elbow resting casually, gaze sharp and unreadable. He picked up a piece of honey bread, studied it briefly, then took a bite. The room waited. So did he. His expression changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. The tension in his shoulders eased. His jaw relaxed. For a split second, he looked younger. This, he said slowly, is not catering food. No one laughed. Who made it? The question moved through the room until it landed on her. Nari felt the weight of every eye turned toward her. I did, she said. Their eyes met. The air shifted. Something familiar flickered behind his gaze, surprise, maybe. Or recognition without context. He took another bite, slower this time, like he was searching for something buried deep. It tastes like my grandmother's kitchen, he said quietly. No one spoke. Nari swallowed. Food remembers, she replied without thinking. Even when people try to forget. For a moment, Jae-min forgot where he was. He forgot the deal on the table. Forgot the men waiting for him to decide their future. All he could see was a woman standing across from him who didn't flinch under his stare. Who didn't rush away. Who spoke to him like he was human. That was new. You can go, he said finally, eyes still on her. She gathered her things and left, heart racing. She told herself that was the end of it. She was wrong. The next morning, before the bakery officially opened, the bell rang. Nari looked up, ready to send the customer away. Jae-min stood in the doorway. No entourage. No suit. Just a dark coat and a quiet presence that filled the room anyway. I want to learn how to make it, he said. She stared at him. Learn? The bread, he clarified. From you. She should have said no. She knew who he was. Everyone did. Men like him didn't ask. They took. And they didn't step into small bakeries alone. But something in his voice wasn't demanding. It was curious. She unlocked the door wider and let him in. The lesson started awkwardly. He stood too stiff. Held the dough like it might bite him. She corrected his hands gently, showing him how to fold instead of press, how patience mattered more than strength. Control ruins it, she told him. You have to listen to the dough. He huffed a quiet laugh. No one's ever told me that before. I can tell, she said, surprising herself. Their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. The man who ordered violence without blinking handled dough with surprising care. He listened. Asked questions. Followed her lead. It unsettled her. They talked while they worked. Not about business. Not about power. About childhood. About food. About how loneliness could exist even in crowded rooms. He came back again. And again. Sometimes early mornings. Sometimes late nights. Always quietly. Always alone. They walked through night markets where no one recognized him. He showed her where to eat the best street food. She showed him how to eat without rushing. They laughed. Softly. Carefully. Danger hovered just outside every moment, unspoken but present. She never asked about the bruises on his knuckles. He never asked why she flinched when people left without saying goodbye. They didn't name what was happening. Naming it would make it real. One night, standing under flickering market lights, he stopped walking. I can't do this halfway, he said. She looked up at him, heart pounding. Then don't. He reached into his coat and pulled out a ring. Simple. Honest. Nothing like the life he lived. Marry me. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just truth laid bare. Her first instinct was fear. Her second was hope. And somewhere far away, unseen and patient, someone watched them take that step, already planning how to tear it apart. If you've ever fallen for someone you knew you shouldn't, if you've ever trusted a moment that felt too good to be safe, this is where everything starts to unravel. Stay close to the story. Because love didn't make the first move toward destruction. Jealousy did. They didn't plan a wedding the way people usually do. There were no invitations. No announcements. No family gatherings where expectations could turn love into negotiation. They married quietly, because quiet was the only place their happiness could survive. It happened outside the city, in a small hillside temple that overlooked a line of trees just beginning to turn green. Early morning. Mist still clinging to the ground. The kind of place people passed without noticing unless they were searching for it. Nari wore a simple dress, cream-colored, borrowed from a friend who didn't ask questions. Her hair was braided back neatly, her hands steady even though her heart wasn't. Jaemin stood beside her, dressed in dark clothes that didn't mark him as powerful or dangerous. Just a man making a choice. They spoke their vows softly. Not promises about forever or perfection. Just honesty. "I choose you," he said, voice low, controlled, but carrying more weight than anything he'd ever commanded. "I choose you too," she answered, knowing exactly what that meant. Afterward, when it was done, he took something from his pocket and placed it in her palm. A jade pendant. Old. Smooth from time. Warm from his skin. "It belonged to my grandmother," he said. "The only woman in my family who lived freely." She understood the meaning without needing it explained. In his world, heirlooms weren't gifts. They were declarations. She wore it beneath her clothes, close to her heart. They didn't move into his penthouse. Too many eyes there. Instead, Jaemin bought a small apartment tucked into a quiet neighborhood where people minded their business and doors closed early. It wasn't large, but it was theirs. A place where no one bowed, no one whispered, no one waited for orders. They learned each other slowly. She discovered he slept lightly, always alert. He learned she counted steps when anxious. Mornings meant coffee brewed exactly the same way every time. Nights meant shared meals, laughter kept low, the kind of joy that felt borrowed. For a while, life was gentle. Time passed without marking itself. Days blurred into weeks. Weeks into months. She kept working at the bakery. He kept his world separate, or so he believed. He never brought his phone into the bedroom. Never took calls when she was speaking. He tried, in his own way, to protect what they had. Still, danger leaked through the cracks. It came in pauses that lasted a second too long. In men who glanced at her once, then looked away too quickly. In questions he didn't ask and answers she didn't press for. And then there was the feeling. The one she couldn't explain. She noticed it one morning when the smell of yeast made her nauseous. Another when exhaustion hit her out of nowhere. She didn't say anything. Not yet. Part of her wanted to hold the truth close, like something fragile that could shatter if spoken too soon. She waited. The shadow appeared around the edges of their happiness. Jaemin's cousin, Kang Sung-ho, began showing up unannounced. Always smiling. Always polite. Always watching. He was family. Blood. That made him dangerous in ways strangers never could be. Sung-ho asked too many questions. About the bakery. About Nari. About why Jaemin was suddenly unavailable for certain meetings. He laughed it off, but his eyes lingered, measuring, calculating. "You've changed," Sung-ho said once, voice light. "Settled down." Jaemin didn't respond. He didn't need to. That night, Nari noticed Jaemin double-checking locks he'd already checked. Not out of fear, out of instinct. Something was moving. Something unseen. She felt it the night she woke up and placed a hand over her stomach, realizing with certainty what she'd been avoiding. Her breath caught. Her eyes burned. A child. Their child. She didn't wake him. She lay there, listening to his breathing, wondering how joy and fear could exist so close together. Outside, the city carried on, unaware that a fragile life had begun forming inside a woman no one was supposed to know existed. And somewhere else, someone who had been watching quietly finally understood what Jaemin had been hiding. Love. Family. A weakness. If you've ever protected something precious by keeping it small, if you've ever believed secrecy was safety, this is where the cost begins to rise. Because shadows don't disappear when ignored. They wait. And when they move, they don't miss. Subscribe now, not because this is entertainment, but because you've felt this before. Because you know what it means to love quietly in a loud, dangerous world. The happiness you're watching isn't fragile by accident. It's fragile because someone has decided it shouldn't exist. And in the next turn of this story, that decision will be acted on. The problem with resentment is that it doesn't announce itself. It waits. Kang Sung-ho had lived in Jaemin's shadow his entire life. Same blood. Same last name. Completely different destinies. Where Jaemin commanded rooms without raising his voice, Sung-ho was always the one smiling too hard, agreeing too fast, standing one step behind. He told himself he was loyal. What he really was patient. Watching Jaemin pull away from the family business. Watching meetings get postponed. Watching decisions soften. Watching power bend around something that didn't belong to their world. A woman. A bakery. A life that wasn't approved. Sung-ho didn't hate Nari because she was weak. He hated her because she was strong enough to change Jaemin. And that made her dangerous. The plan didn't come from rage. Rage was sloppy. This came from calculation. He waited until Jaemin was called away on urgent business, 2 weeks in Japan, negotiations that required his full attention. No phone calls. No interruptions. The kind of distance that created silence. Silence was useful. Sung-ho showed up at Sweet Baobab on a quiet morning when the street was still waking up. Nari recognized him immediately. Family. That was what made her open the door. I was sent by Jaemin, he said gently, smiling like someone delivering bad news with good intentions. Her chest tightened. Is something wrong? He sighed, like a man burdened by loyalty. Pulled out his phone. The photos were clear. Too clear. Jaemin sitting across from a woman dressed in wealth. Their hands close. Their faces familiar in a way that hurt to look at. An engagement dinner. Another photo rings. Another, family elders smiling. Sung-ho watched her closely as the color drained from her face. It's being announced soon, he said softly. The alliance was decided years ago. You were unexpected. Unexpected. The word lodged deep. Nari shook her head. He wouldn't. He didn't want to hurt you, Sung-ho interrupted quickly. That's why he asked me to handle this. He placed the papers on the counter. Divorce documents. Already signed. Her hands trembled as she touched the page. The signature was unmistakable. The same sharp strokes she had watched him write 100 times. The same flourish at the end. Her heart cracked open. This is to protect you, Sung-ho continued. My uncle is old-fashioned. If he finds out about you, about the marriage, it won't end quietly. Your grandmother's bakery, your grandmother herself. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Fear rushed in, cold and suffocating. Nari thought of Mama Eunice. Of the bakery built with scarred hands. Of a life that had already survived too much to be destroyed by secrets. Sign, Sung-ho said, sliding the pen closer. Disappear. Let him move forward. Everyone stays safe. She stared at the papers. She thought of late nights. Of flower-dusted laughter. Of vows whispered where no one could hear them. Then she thought of blood. Of power. Of what his family was capable of. She signed. Each stroke felt like betrayal. Of him. Of herself. Of the future she hadn't even spoken aloud yet. Sung-ho took the papers, nodded once, and left without another word. That night, Jaemin didn't call. The next day, his number went unanswered. By the third, the apartment was emptied. Every trace of him erased like he had never existed. Nari didn't cry at first. She moved through the days like someone underwater. Returned the jade pendant to its box. Packed a bag. Left Seoul before the city could ask questions. 2 weeks later, sickness hit her in waves. She sat on the edge of a borrowed bed, staring at a test she didn't need to take twice. Positive. The room spun. A child. His child. The truth pressed against her chest, heavy and alive, with nowhere to go. She didn't call him. She didn't chase explanations. She vanished. To protect what was left. To protect the life growing quietly inside her. Alone. If you've ever believed someone you loved abandoned you, if you've ever carried a secret because telling the truth felt more dangerous than silence, this is the moment everything breaks. Subscribe, not because this story is dramatic, but because it's human. Because betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes wearing family. And the lie she swallowed that day? It didn't just separate two lovers. It set a clock in motion. And when time runs out, someone always pays. 8 months can feel like a lifetime when silence is doing the talking. For Kang Jae-min, the days after Nari vanished blurred into one long stretch of unfinished nights. The apartment felt wrong the moment he stepped inside, too empty, too clean, like someone had erased a life with intention. Her scent was gone. The kitchen bare. The jade box missing. No note. No explanation. Just absence. At first, he assumed panic. Fear. The pressure of his world finally crushing something fragile. He told himself she needed space, that she'd call once she felt safe. She didn't. Days turned sharp. Weeks turned cold. He searched. Not quietly. He had men checking airports, ports, train stations. He paid people to ask questions they didn't want to answer. He threatened airlines for passenger lists. He tore through neighborhoods she loved, stood outside bakeries that smelled wrong because she wasn't there. Nothing. Every dead end tightened something in his chest he didn't know how to loosen. Sung-ho stayed close through it all. She left on her own, his cousin said calmly. I showed you the message she sent. She said she couldn't live like this anymore. Jaemin read the message again and again. The words were polite, distant, final. He didn't believe them. But belief is hard to hold when proof keeps whispering the same lie. So he buried himself in work. And work, for him, meant control. Territory expanded. Rivals disappeared. Meetings ended faster. Mistakes stopped happening around him because people were too afraid to make them. His name became heavier, darker. Men spoke it like a warning. Inside, something went numb. The nights were the worst. He stopped sleeping in the bedroom. Took calls until dawn. Let exhaustion keep him from thinking. From remembering the way she used to hum while cooking. The way she corrected his hands when he rushed. 8 months without answers turned into 8 months of rage disguised as focus. Meanwhile, Nari learned how quiet the sea could be. She stayed in a coastal town outside Busan, tucked into the hills where waves met stone and no one asked questions. Her great-aunt's house smelled of salt and old wood. The neighbors minded their own lives. The streets emptied early. It was safe. And unbearably lonely. Her body changed slowly, then all at once. She learned new aches. New fears. New moments of wonder she didn't know how to share. Each kick reminded her of the truth she carried alone. At night, she spoke softly to her stomach. I know, she whispered once, tears sliding into her pillow. I know you don't understand yet. But I'm trying to protect you. She told the baby about the bakery. About flour on her hands and honey in the air. About a man who laughed quietly and learned patience through dough. She never said his name. Sometimes she imagined him angry. Other times happy. Most nights, she imagined nothing at all. Hope was too heavy to carry. News traveled, even when she didn't want it to. She heard whispers of his growing power. Of how ruthless he'd become. Of how dangerous his name was now. It hurt in ways she didn't have words for. He chose his world, she told herself. And I chose this. But choice made under threat never felt clean. Back in Seoul, Sung-ho watched everything unfold with careful satisfaction. He fed Jaemin updates. Half-truths. Convenient details. She's in Europe now, he said once. I heard she took a job. Wants a normal life. Normal. The word stung. Jaemin nodded, face unreadable. But something cracked a little deeper every time. Fate, however, doesn't respect lies forever. The sea grew rough one morning, and Nari's great-aunt passed quietly days later. With nowhere else to go and no strength left to keep hiding, Nari returned to the only place that still felt real. Sweet Baobab Bakery. Mama Eunice cried when she saw her. Asked no questions. Just held her granddaughter and whispered prayers over her growing belly. They fell back into routine. Early mornings. Warm ovens. Quiet afternoons. Nari convinced herself she was invisible. She was wrong. 8 months after disappearance met 8 months of searching. The bell above the bakery door rang. And everything they had tried to forget came rushing back. If you've ever carried pain in silence, if you've ever believed separation meant safety, you already feel what's coming. Subscribe, not because this story is dramatic, but because it's honest. Because some reunions don't happen gently. They explode. And the moment that door opens again, nothing will be able to stay hidden. The bell above the bakery door had barely stopped ringing when the past caught up to them. Jaemin still had Nari's wrist in his hand, not tight, not gentle, just enough to keep her from slipping away again. The smell of honey and spice hung in the air, but now it felt heavy, almost suffocating. The broken pastries lay on the floor between them like evidence of something already ruined. 8 months, he said again, quieter this time. Do you know what that does to a man? Nari swallowed hard. You don't get to ask me that. She finally yanked her hand free and backed away, one palm pressed protectively over her belly. You sent the papers. You made your choice. His eyes sharpened. What papers? The words landed wrong. Her breath caught. Don't do that. Your cousin brought them himself. Signed. Clean. You didn't even have the decency to show up. For the first time since he walked in, Jaemin went still. Not calm. Not thoughtful. Still. The papers, he said slowly. Showed you my signature? Yes, she snapped, pain cracking through her voice. I watched him slide them across my counter like I meant nothing. Like 8 months of my life were a mistake you needed erased. Something dark moved behind Jaemin's eyes. My cousin, he said, tasting the words. Sungho? Nari nodded, confused now. You were in Japan. That's what he said. You couldn't come yourself. The pieces slammed together. Jaemin exhaled through his nose, a sound sharp enough to cut. I never signed anything. Her heart slammed hard against her ribs. That's not funny. I'm not joking. The silence stretched, thick and dangerous. There was no engagement, he continued. No woman. No plan to replace you. I was sent away on business. When I came back, you were gone. Nari shook her head, the room tilting. That's impossible. He showed me photos. Photos can be made, Jaemin said flatly. Signatures forged. Her legs weakened. But the threats, she whispered. He said your family would destroy my grandmother's bakery. That I was a liability. Jaemin's jaw tightened. My family didn't know you existed. The truth crashed into her all at once. 8 months of pain. Of hiding. Of believing she'd been discarded. All of it built on a lie. The baby kicked hard, sudden and violent, as if reacting to the surge of emotion ripping through her body. Jaemin's gaze dropped instantly. Slowly. Carefully. To her stomach. His voice lowered. That child. How far along are you? She didn't answer. Didn't need to. His breath hitched. 8 months. Understanding hit him like a blow to the chest. That's mine, he said, not as a question. Yes, she whispered. It's yours. Something broke in him. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet, devastating crack. My cousin, he said, voice deadly calm. Stole 8 months of my life. Before Nari could respond, pain ripped through her abdomen, sharp, deep, wrong. She gasped, doubling over, fingers clawing at the counter. This isn't, she choked. This isn't normal. Jaemin caught her instantly, panic flashing through the control he wore like armor. What's happening? She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. I don't know. It hurts too much. He didn't hesitate. He lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing and turned toward the door. Car. Now, he ordered. Outside, the black sedan screeched to the curb. As the car tore through traffic, Nari curled against him, breathing ragged, pain rolling through her in waves. Jaemin's arm wrapped around her, steady, unyielding. He pulled out his phone. Clear the hospital, he said into the line. Top floor. Private wing. Another call. I want Dr. Han. Now. Another. Find Sungho. Pause. No. Don't hurt him yet. Another pause, colder this time. I want him alive. I want him scared. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Too fast. Nurses. Monitors. Voices overlapping. Nari was rushed away, her hand slipping from his grasp as doors swung shut. Jaemin stood alone in the hallway, jaw clenched, eyes burning. The man who controlled half the city suddenly had no control at all. His phone buzzed. "They have him," a voice said. "Sung-ho's asking for you." Jaemin closed his eyes once, then opened them. "Good," he said. "Tell him not to worry." He looked toward the surgery doors, fists tightening. His family's about to reunite. If you've ever learned the truth too late, if you've ever realized someone stole years from your life while smiling to your face, you already know this isn't just about love anymore. Subscribe, not for drama, but because betrayal always comes due. Behind those doors, a life hangs in the balance. And outside them, a reckoning is being prepared. The surgery doors stayed closed longer than they should have. Jaemin stood in the hallway without sitting, without moving, his jacket still streaked with flour from the bakery, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Nurses passed him carefully. Doctors avoided his eyes. Everyone could feel the gravity pulling toward him. Inside that room was the only thing he couldn't control. His phone buzzed once, then stopped. That was enough. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need details. The silence told him everything he needed to know. Somewhere far from the hospital, Kang Sung-ho ceased to exist in the way he once had. Not publicly, not loudly, just erased. Accounts frozen. Protection withdrawn. Doors closed that would never open again. No explanation offered. No mercy requested. Justice in Jaemin's world was quiet and final. When the doors finally opened, the doctor's face said what words struggled to form. "She's stable," she said. "We stopped the early labor. But she needs rest. No stress. None." Jaemin nodded once. "She'll have it." Nari woke later in a private room, light filtering through tall windows. Her body felt heavy, drained, but alive. Jaemin sat beside the bed, unmoving, like he had been holding his breath the entire time she'd been gone. "You scared me," he said quietly. She swallowed. "I thought I lost you." "You didn't," he replied. "You never did." They didn't talk about the cousin. They didn't need to. The days that followed were still, carefully protected. Nari was placed on strict bed rest, surrounded by calm she wasn't used to trusting. Jaemin moved her from the city to a mountain estate tucked into quiet land where trees stood guard and the air felt clean. No reporters. No questions. Just silence and safety. He carried her inside himself, refusing to let her walk. "I can walk," she protested weakly. "I know," he said. "Let me do this." Weeks passed slowly. The kind of slow that gives space for fear and hope to sit together. He brought her meals himself. Sat beside her for hours without speaking. Learned the rhythm of the baby's kicks. Learned how to be gentle without trying. And then, one cold morning, it happened. Pain returned, different this time. Purposeful. This time, it was right. The drive to the hospital felt unreal. The lights. The voices. The urgency. Jaemin never let go of her hand. Hours blurred. And then, a cry. Then another. The room went silent. "There are two," the doctor said, disbelief softening her voice. "You were carrying twins." Nari laughed and cried at the same time. Jaemin didn't move. "Two." He stared at the babies like the world had tilted and reassembled itself without warning. A girl. Strong cry. Fierce eyes. Then a boy. Smaller. Quiet. Watching. He held them like glass. "They're real," he whispered. "They're really here." They named the girl Sora, meaning sky. Because she came first, loud and fearless. The boy they named Jean, meaning truth, because he arrived quietly, but changed everything. Jaemin broke then. Not loudly. Not in front of anyone but Nari. Tears slipped down his face as he pressed his forehead to theirs. "I should have protected you sooner," he said. "I should have been there." "You're here now," Nari whispered. That's what matters. Family to him had always meant duty, control, power. Now it meant this. Two tiny hearts. One woman who refused to disappear. A life rebuilt from loss. But peace never lasts without being tested. As he stood at the window that night, twins asleep behind him, Jaemin knew something was coming. The world would notice. His family would ask questions. Enemies would adjust. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a different kind of war. If this story has held you, if you felt the weight of love, loss, and second chances, subscribe now. Not because everything is resolved, but because what comes next will decide whether this family survives the world that created him. They have new life. But life always demands a price. The world didn't learn about them quietly. Jaemin made sure of that. 3 weeks after the twins came home, after Nari had healed enough to stand without swaying and the babies had learned the sound of their parents' voices, he called a family gathering. Not a meeting. Not a negotiation. A declaration. The estate filled with people who mattered, elders, lieutenants, men who had watched Jaemin rise and wondered what had softened him. They expected strategy, territory, orders. What they got was truth. Nari stood beside him, the twins cradled in her arms, her spine straight even though her heart raced. She didn't hide, didn't step back, didn't lower her gaze. Jaemin's voice carried without effort. "This is my wife," he said. "And these are my children." A murmur rippled through the room. No denial followed. No debate. He didn't allow space for it. "I don't ask permission for my family," he continued, calm and unyielding. "Anyone who questions that is questioning me." Silence settled, thick, careful, respectful. His father studied them for a long moment. A man built from old rules and hard lessons. Then he nodded once. "Blood protects blood," he said. "And legacy lives through children." That was it. Acceptance didn't come with applause. It came with understanding, and in their world, that mattered more. Mama Eunice arrived later that afternoon. She took one look at Jaemin holding the twins, awkward, careful, terrified of doing it wrong, and hummed softly. "So," she said, eyeing him, "you're the man who made my granddaughter disappear and then come back stronger." He bowed deeply. "Yes, ma'am." She studied him, then nodded. "Good. Strong hands are useful. Strong hearts are rare." That night, plans were made. Sweet Baobab didn't stay small. With resources now open and protection honest, the bakery expanded, not rushed, not flashy, but intentional. New locations followed the same rules: community first, tradition honored, no shortcuts. Mama Eunice oversaw everything like a general with flour on her sleeves. Nari returned slowly, the twins often sleeping nearby as she worked. Customers lined up again. Stories spread, not gossip, but respect. They celebrated quietly but fully. A cultural ceremony followed, blending African rhythms and Korean traditions. Drums. Soft singing. Red threads tied gently around the twins' wrists, blessings whispered instead of shouted. Jaemin watched it all like a man seeing color for the first time. Later, beneath flowering trees just beginning to bloom, he and Nari renewed their vows. No secrecy this time. No shadows. Just honesty spoken out loud. "I chose you once in silence," he said. "I choose you now where the world can hear it." She smiled through tears. "I choose you without fear." When the night ended and the estate grew quiet, Jaemin stood on the balcony, twins asleep behind him, Nari's head resting against his shoulder. "I lost time," he said softly. "I'll never get it back." She squeezed his hand. "We don't count what we lost. We count what we keep." He looked out over the city lights, understanding something at last. Legacy wasn't power passed down. It was love protected forward. If you've stayed with this story to the end, ask yourself something real. What would you have done? If love disappeared without explanation? If truth came too late? If forgiveness meant rebuilding from ashes? Would you walk away, or would you fight for what's yours? If this story touched something personal, don't scroll past it. Subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell your own truth. Stories like this survive because people recognize themselves in them. Because sometimes family isn't what you're born into. It's what you protect when the world tries to take it from you. And somewhere, right now, another door is about to open. Another truth waiting to be claimed.